Sometimes evil and injustice are not met with corrective justice, but instead by mercy. Who will meet evil and injustice with mercy rather than with punishment? God will show compassion and faithfulness to his people, even if they are sometimes unjust. Today's Keep in Mind verse reads, Who is a God like unto thee, that pardoneth iniquity, and passeth by the transgression of the remnant of his heritage? He retaineth not his anger forever, because he delighteth in mercy. Micah chapter 7, verse 18. The shepherd's staff has a vast amount of significance in the Bible. Not only does it represent guidance and stability, it also represents an extension of power. The staff was also used for support, much like a walking stick. Because shepherds have the daunting task of controlling something that is much larger than them, an entire flock of sheep, it was necessary to have an extension of their hand that would give them the ability to prod and pull the flock when they went astray or needed direction. Another reason the staff came to symbolize an extension of powers was its use in defending the flock from predatory animals. God does not retain his anger forever. He may be angry with his people when they sin, but once they have repented or been punished, he instead delights or takes pleasure in showing mercy. He is more ready to save than to destroy. Nothing can please him better than having the opportunity to show mercy to the sinner. Micah anticipates that when the Lord began to work miracles for Israel again, his activity will have a dramatic effect on the nations around them, as it did on the Egyptians at the time of the Exodus. They will see this and be confounded in spite of all their might, because they saw the mighty acts of God, and they will realize how weak they really are. The nations who thought they were so strong will realize that their strength is nothing compared to God's power, and they'll be ashamed of their strength instead of proud. Because he is such a God, as Micah describes in verse 18, he will turn again. His face has been long turned from his people because of their sins, but he will have compassion on them, as he would pity their state and feel for their sorrows, even for our sorrows. He will defeat the iniquities of his people and demonstrate his complete victory over their sin. To further accentuate the extent of his forgiveness, he will cast all their sins into the depths of the sea. He will fully pardon them. The word subdue here paints the picture of sin as an enemy that God conquers and liberates his people from, as in Romans chapter 6, verse 14. And God overcomes sin and sets his people free. The book of Micah, despite its prophecies of punishment and judgment in the earlier chapters, ends on a note of joy and confidence that the nation will eventually enjoy a restored relationship with the Lord. And concluding his prophecy, Micah sees God's future work as a continuation of his covenants and promises to the Israelites' ancestors. He knows that the same love, compassion, and mercy he showed to their parents was available to them, if they received it in faith. Regardless of the moral and spiritual decline of his people, God can be relied on to be faithful to his covenant promises. Here's our lesson. How do we reconcile Micah's witness of the God of justice with the God of mercy? Perhaps it's helpful to remember him as the loving God who holds us accountable to the consequences of our choices in order to encourage us to be who he created us to be. In perfect justice, God confronts and judges sin definitively, but not to the exclusion of his mercy and grace. In his mercy, God forgives the sins that seem unforgivable. In his grace, he looks beyond our faults and sees our need, as he invites us to something greater than what we pursued in our sin, and empowers us to live holy lives in him. So God deals with sin. God forgives sin. God graces and empowers us to live beyond our sin, living instead in his holy life. As we confront the sin in the lives of others as well as our own, perhaps the question to guide us is a question presented throughout the Bible. Who do we want to be? God's people or our own? Thank you for listening and subscribing to iLights. May the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus.